And we are live. All right. Well, thanks. Hey, Brian, thanks for joining me on Thanksgiving Eve. uh,
I feel like I'm the news anchor who gets stuck on like the holidays and the weekends, and all the stars are taking today off.
hey! I'm not quite sure how to take that. Quite frankly, I think both of us are we're the weekend hosts that get
There
to
you
get
go.
prime time today. But so we had a little bit of time off, and I'm not sure what our schedule is going to look like through the holidays. But I wanted to squeeze this one in because this is something that has actually come up through forbearancereport.org a couple of times in the last month, maybe two or three times, and it's happened enough that I know it's a significant challenge. And really, what we're talking about is the forbearance that was allowed through the CARES Act has more or less run its course. And most people are coming out of the forbearance period. There was a maximum of 18 months, and we're coming up on 18 months, but not everybody got 18 months. And some of the feedback that I'm getting that I've been getting from the website, there's a couple of different things. The first thing that I'm seeing is that people are hearing about the foreclosure moratoriums. Like there's a national foreclosure moratorium until December 31st, and I've also talked to people that came out of forbearance and they didn't know it.
Mm.
So when they contacted their servicer, because and again, we get one side of this story, right? And so that's kind of what we're going to try to clear up today, is what the other side of the story looks like and what the servicer's responsibility is. But I've had more than one person say that by the time they contacted the servicer, they were in the NOD department because they were out of forbearance, and they were now 90 days late or 60 days late.
Yeah.
And because there's a foreclosure moratorium, the servicers are not sending out default notices to consumers that are out of forbearance and not making their payments. So that's what we're going to buzz through today. We're going to talk about what you need to know as a homeowner to avoid foreclosure, and to protect your home after forbearance and the foreclosure moratoriums expire. So the first thing, that I wanted to touch on is that forbearance and foreclosure are two completely different things. Forbearance has always existed as a loss mitigation strategy that your servicer will put you through. That forbearance is one option, and you worked for servicers, right? So maybe
Yeah.
you could give a better description of what forbearance is, because it's not new.
That's right. No, you're right. It's a tool in the toolkit of a servicer, and specifically in the servicer's loss mitigation, area or department. One thing, Scott, that I like to clarify, and we talked about this before, the servicer in a lot of cases in our industry, in the mortgage industry, isn't necessarily the entity who you owe the loan amount, you owe your payment to. So loans are originated and then largely sold into mortgage-backed securities and pools of other loans. And those securities could be Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, could be a Ginnie Mae if it's an FHA or VA loan. And so that asset owner is essentially that whoever that MBS, that mortgage-backed security investor is. So Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, FHA, VA roll into Ginnie Mae. So the servicer themselves is really that they perform the tasks necessary to collect payments on mortgages, take those payments that are often contain principal and interest, taxes and insurance, right?
Mhm.
Your escrow accounts, and then take the payments that they collect from the consumer and then disperse back to either the investor, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the portion of that principal and interest payment that is due to the investor, and then they take that escrow portion, the taxes and insurance portion of the monthly payment, and create a holding or an escrow account on behalf of the consumer to then pay their property taxes and pay the hazard insurance, the insurance on the home, right?
Mhm.
And so, coming from that
It-
space, I think it's important to just recognize that not every servicer is who owns the loan and who lent the money out, and so most
but
servicers therefore are following a set of guidelines or rules that have been put on them by the entity they're servicing the loan for. So I just like to level set there, because I think most consumers, the average consumer, why wouldn't you think any other way? I get a statement from the servicer that's who owns my loan. Well, not always the case.
well, it is the case though that the servicer is also the communication
Yes. Yes.
channel between whoever owns the loan and the consumer.
That's right.
And we're gonna in the upcoming slides we're gonna talk a little bit about what the servicer's responsibility is and what their responsibility is in this. But initially, so forbearance
Yeah.
forbearance
So,
is just this one tool that allows you to temporarily not make payments, but at the other side of that, you have to make payment arrangements to pay
yeah.
back those skipped payments. It's one of the options to help you to help avoid foreclosure.
Yeah. So using the CARES Act, we've seen, so our industry through the pandemic has now seen forbearance kind of at scale, because we never really saw it deployed at scale the way it's been
Right.
deployed. And the reason it's been done at scale is because it was mandated that any consumer
No
who
questions
was
asked.
impacted
Yeah.
by COVID could go into forbearance. And so I think we talked about this way back when we first started doing these talks. Forbearance is not forgiveness.
Yep.
It is, as you said, Scott, it's a arrangement for repayment of payments that have been paused, right? So in the case of the CARES Act and the forbearance that's been associated with that, I think we've had 12 plus months of the ability for a consumer homeowner to pause their mortgage payments. And so, to make the math easy, if you pay $1,000 a month for 12 months, there's $12,000 of paused payments that are now need to be accounted for. And so, on the other side of forbearance, typically you've got some options in terms of how to repay that. One option is you write a check for $12,000 and
Yep.
you pay in full your accrued forbearance balance, and now you're back on your regular payment schedule. Not always the best option. Another option would be to take that $12,000 of accrued balance and spread it out over X number of months, could be 24, 36, 48 months, whatever the servicer works out with the consumer. And then that amount gets added to your normal payment. And then you start resuming your payments plus that monthly amount. And then what came out of this recent, the pandemic and the CARES Act was the ability to take that 12,000 and now on certain loans, put it at the end of the term, right? So
Yep.
you
Deferment.
resume making your normal $1,000 payment, and then when your loan matures, either you paid your last payment, if it's a 30-year payment, you've paid number 360, you would owe $12,000 at the end of that cycle. Or if you sold your home, if you refinanced, that 12,000 would come due and payable when that loan pays off, either way. So that's kind of the way forbearance is established, and then those are some of the options to remedy forbearance.
Well, and what we're experiencing now is what for us was a foreseeable challenge of 5 million people not making their payments over a 90-day period of time, and the servicers do not have the resources or the software to handle such a huge chunk of their portfolio not making their payments.
Yeah.
And that includes the communication of what happens next, and how people exit forbearance. And that's, we started talking about this as soon as the CARES Act, because we anticipated some of these issues. So the one thing that everybody needs to understand is that your service wants to help. Nobody, and I hear this all the time, well, servicers just want to take my home.
No, they don't.
No way. No way. So first of all, and this is something Courtney got stuck in holiday airport traffic, and so she couldn't join us here, but she's the one that brought this up, and she said, I wish she was here because she's so eloquent with this stuff. It just rolls off her tongue. But she basically said it would be easier from a regulation standpoint for you to start a thermonuclear power plant today than it is to start a new servicer, mortgage servicer. And that was as a result of 2008. And a lot of the responsibility kind of went on the servicers for, some of the fallout after everything crashed. So it is a highly regulated business. There are no shenanigans. There may be some disorganization. There may be some lack of communication, but there are no shenanigans. These servicers are not trying to take their home or take your home. The CFPB, if you go to the CFPB website, there's actually there was guidance that came out about a month ago, maybe, where I guess they're just encouraging servicers, but they're kind of trying to lay out the expectations for servicers that they have an obligation to reach out to you and connect with you. And that's really, really important to understand when we come up to one of the next slides, which is what your responsibility is in this whole thing. The other thing is it is extremely expensive for a servicer to foreclose. Brian, I don't know what your experience is. The numbers that I used to hear thrown around was anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 in attorney's fees and maintenance to the property and paying commissions to a real estate agent to list it. Does that sound like that number is in the ballpark?
I think the number definitely is that's in the range, no doubt about it. It's not servicers are not in business to go through that process. They're really built for the 97% of loans that pay on time, and they're really built to scale for the things we talked about earlier, which is collecting a payment, breaking that payment up into the pieces, and then distributing the monies to the parties that need it. That's how the servicers actually really make money.
So I'm glad you said that, because that was actually the whole reason why Courtney wanted to have this conversation, is that prior to COVID, foreclosures were less than 2% nationwide.
Yeah.
Currently they're between 4 and 6%. And I think we're just starting to see, or maybe that wasn't foreclosures, it was delinquencies. Delinquencies, and delinquencies are hard to measure because, again, there's a foreclosure moratorium, so they're not allowed to address those delinquencies. They're happening in the background. Now, on the bottom of the screen here, I have a ticker for the HUD housing counselor. Our mantra today is, if you're in this situation, and if you have any challenges at all, that you need to speak to a HUD counselor. And it was funny. I don't even know if I can find it or if it's worth finding it, but I'm going to tell this story at the end, and I'm going to see if I can find it. But the HUD counseling centers, through the consumer finance, This is the URL to find a HUD counselor. They can help you communicate with your servicer if you don't think you're getting it. So if you're a person that is in forbearance or you're coming out of forbearance and you're not quite sure what to do, what your options and your responsibility is don't be an ostrich. Don't put your head in the sand. Don't think this is going to go away. There is not going to be any forgiveness. If you had forbearance for 12 months, you owe 12 months worth of payments to the bank. And they want to know that they're going to get that money one way or another because it's owed to them. It was not, forbearance is not forgiveness. And be honest with yourself on where you are. Can you afford your payment right now? And if you can't, what can you afford? These are really, really important questions that you have to ask yourself, and you have to be honest with yourself on what these are. Apply for loss mitigation. So we've talked about this a lot through your servicer. If you've gone to your servicer's website, apply for loss mitigation. If you haven't heard anything, apply for it again. Find the homeowner assistance funds, right, in your state. Is it statewide, Brian, that we find those?
Yeah, it's state, but even down to municipalities as well.
So, and we talked about this in another episode. Go to Google and type in HAF and then your county, your city, your state, and see what comes up. There are multiple sources. The federal government handed out billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars to charities and nonprofits around the country. And they have money available that are grants that they can give you to help you get on top of your taxes, get on top of your payments. And as we discussed in our prior episode, you can apply for more than one. It's like student loans. Yeah. Apply for every single one that's available and get as many as you can get. And the single most important thing is be engaged. You're not going to be able to ignore this, and it's not going to go away. You've got to be honest, and you can try to buy as much time as you can, but quite frankly, your time has run out. When the national foreclosure moratorium is up at the end of the year in 30 days, right? 35 days. You're going to have to start having these conversations and ignoring those phone calls, or saying that you didn't get a phone call and saying it didn't arrive in the mail when the servicer is sending stuff out. It's not going to cut it. It sounds harsh, but just as the servicers have a tremendous amount of responsibility and accountability, we have the same level of accountability and responsibility as consumers. Now, this is an important conversation, and Courtney actually thought this would be a great conversation for you, is understand what equity means.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't think a lot of people don't know what equity means. And in the industry, we've kind of been saying this isn't going to be as bad as 2008 because everyone has equity.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about that a little bit, about what equity is and why that's important, and why foreclosure should not be an option for most people.
Right. So, I mean, equity's math. There's a couple variables in the equation. One variable is how much you owe on your home, right? How much outstanding debt is on your home. And it could be a first mortgage. Maybe you have a home equity loan or a line of credit. Mm-hmm. So any loans that you've secured using your property, your home, if you add up the outstanding balance, which by the way includes that forbearance balance, that's part of the outstanding balance. That's what you owe against that home. The other part of the equation is how much is your home worth? How much could you sell it for today? So if we just kind of use math and say you owe $210,000 between your first mortgage and maybe a home equity line of credit, but your home's worth $240,000, you could sell it for $240,000 today. you have $30,000 of equity. So when you sell your home, you sell it at 240,000, you have $30,000 between what you're going to pay off the note for the bank or the mortgage company, right? The servicer, and then any fees for that, whatever you pay the realtor to list and sell the home. The net is your cash, right? So in the case where, and even if it's a tighter margin, you're better off making a sale, paying off the notes than going through foreclosure, because you've just as soon as you go through foreclosure, you've just started a clock on how long you have to wait before you can get a federally backed loan again, right? And so and or the cost for a loan, if you could get one after it, is going to be very exorbitant. So if you have equity and you can sell your home and net at least your what you owe, it's a much better solution than going through foreclosure.
And this is an ugly conversation, and it's a hard reality to face, that I might lose my home. But being proactive and selling your home, this is part of being honest with yourself. If you know that you can't afford the payments and you're still having challenges with employment because of COVID or whatever the case is, if you foreclose, you're 100% right. You're a minimum of 3 years from being able to buy another home. But if you missed a couple of payments and you sold the home and you don't have a foreclosure, you're probably not going to have a short sale. And the interesting thing about equity, Brian, is also the reason why we say that homeownership is such an important investment vehicle, because that equity is earned in a compound interest fashion. Because home values, especially through these last couple of years, have been much higher than the national average. National average is usually between about 3 and 5%, maybe. But in a lot of states, it's much higher than that for the last few years. Yeah. So if your home was worth 300,000, and I can't do this math fast enough, but if your home is 300,000 one year, and then with the increase in equity, now your home is worth 310,000. Now the next year, that 310,000 is worth 5 to 7% more. Yeah. And then that total is worth 5 to 7% more the following year. So there's this compounding effect where your equity is really could be growing at a much faster pace than you expect. The one thing that I kind of wanted to make sure that I slid in here, because we saw a lot of this after the crash of 2008. And what happened is, I call them the ambulance chasing bankruptcy attorneys, started calling people. You started seeing billboards and commercials, and they would tell people that you can stop foreclosure with a bankruptcy. And that's not true. That's a half truth. You can postpone foreclosure while you're going through the bankruptcy process. And then as soon as the bankruptcy is discharged, the foreclosure proceedings are going to start again. So now, not only have you got a bankruptcy on your record, now you have this foreclosure on your record. When if you had equity, you very well could have potentially avoided all of this.
And Scott, we talked about the challenge of buying a new home following a foreclosure, but you will, the available homes or apartments to rent will shrink as well as you come out if you go into a foreclosure, because it will impact your credit. You will absolutely have a much smaller universe of available rental properties to take advantage of as well. So it's just, we're in this, we said it a couple times, but this cycle is not the same as the crash of 08, 09, because properties actually have appreciated through this cycle, and they continue to be at pretty elevated levels. And so there's an opportunity, if for a much softer landing, and I think it's getting to a counselor is the right answer, because they will direct you to all of your options and get you on a path to resolution.
The other thing that I kind of wanted to throw in here is that your equity is yours, but if you allow the lender to foreclose on you, that $60,000 for attorney's fees, the servicer is not going to eat that.
Yeah,
that's coming out of your equity.
Yeah.
So they're going to eat up all of your equity that you could have had in your pocket. They're going to eat all of that up for the process. And chances are you're not going to see anything on the other side of that. And what would be really heartbreaking is if you were $60,000 or $50,000 behind on your payments, you have $200,000 of equity, and you get foreclosed on, and then you get $50,000 in your pocket, because they ate up the rest of it in processes and penalties and attorney's fees and all of this kind of thing. So, folks, this stuff is serious. Number one, just know what your options are. Know that the servicer is trying to reach out to you. It would be highly unusual if the servicer is not making some attempt to try to contact you, and you saying, well, I was waiting for them to contact me, is probably not going to cut it.
No.
So it be proactive, be honest, get out there, tackle this, and see what you can do. See what you can do about call the HUD counselor. So let me find this, because we have a second, and where was I? We have a second, and let me see if I can. Where is it here? Oh, I hope I can find this. Okay, I can't waste too much time with this. So basically, after I had the conversation with Courtney, and we said, this is an important topic, let's bring it up. Oh, okay, here it is. I was able to find it, I think. Okay, so after we had this conversation, somebody left a comment on findmywayhome.com, and they basically said, I was 6 months behind on my mortgage prior to forbearance, and they had a Freddie Mac loan. They took forbearance for 18 months. They're 24 months behind. And basically, I had the exact conversation that we just had in the last 30 minutes. I wrote him back a detailed email. I told him, listen, you got to be honest with yourself, check your equity, all of this kind of stuff. And then I sent him a link to the HUD counseling. And this is what he sent back to me. He said, thanks for the informative reply. I did speak with a nonprofit that represents HUD in my area, and it sounds like the policies are very fluid now. They said most loan servicers want to avoid foreclosure, as many borrowers are dealing with this, including many in my situation that were delinquent before. He said lenders are overwhelmed with requests right now, and policy is being formed on the fly. The comment was made that these are serious issues with a lack of guidance given up front, and delinquent, and basically they're trying to figure it out. So it was funny because we had this conversation, and then you and I just talked about this for 30 minutes, and then somebody made this comment, and they came back and said the exact same thing that we just said over the last 30 minutes. So contact that, and quite frankly, if you've contacted a HUD counselor, that documentation that you made that effort could benefit you in the future when you start negotiating what your options are.
Yep.
So if the servicer truly was behind and wasn't able to reach out to you, you showing that you made an attempt to resolve this could go a very long ways. So not a super fun or fantastic conversation for the holidays, but staying in front of these things is going to be far less painful than you getting a notice on your door that your house is being sold after the beginning of the year, and then you not having recourse because you ignored all of the warnings. Yep. So, Brian, thank you for being here. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your knowledge and your input and your experience. And I don't know if we're going to be back before the holidays, but we definitely have some exciting things before the holidays with America's Homeownership Alliance is doing a really big petition drive to try to pressure the policymakers to remove or to lessen the cost of getting a conventional loan. And I think that we can get the momentum to make a real big impact on that and make homeownership more affordable in 2022. So that's our mantra.
I love it. Scott, thanks for doing this, man. This has been a great resource that you've made available to consumers. So thank you from all of us in the industry.
Yeah, no, we're all doing our best. So thanks, buddy. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.